The air in the dining room felt thick, almost as if the room itself was holding its breath. My fork hovered midair, a piece of chicken forgotten on the tines. Then Sarah's voice sliced through the silence like a knife. "I had lunch with James today," she said, her tone light, too light, as her eyes lingered on the slow swirl of wine in her glass. My heart stumbled, a cold rush spreading through my chest like spilled ink. James, her ex, the man she'd promised she'd erase from her life 2 decades ago, back when we were still building ours. I stared at her, waiting for something more, but she only lifted the glass and took a shaky sip, her lips trembling against the rim. "How is it?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay calm, even as something dark began to twist inside me. She froze, fingers tightening around the stem of her glass. In that small pause, I felt it, the first thread of something beginning to unravel. The room, once warm and familiar, now felt distant, almost staged. The oak table that had heard our laughter and held our quiet plans suddenly looked foreign. Even the hum of the refrigerator sounded accusing. My eyes caught everything. The faint crayon marks from our daughter's drawings, the dull shimmer of Sarah's wedding ring tapping softly against the glass. "It was fine," she finally said, setting the glass down with exaggerated care. "Just catching up." Her voice was soft, but the words landed heavy, dropping between us like stones. I wanted to believe her. God, I did. But the past few months replayed in my mind, her late nights, the secret smiles at her phone, the way she moved through our home like a ghost. Signs I dismissed as stress now flashed in my head like warning lights. "Catching up?" I echoed. "After all this time?" She nodded, tucking a loose strand of auburn hair behind her ear, a nervous habit I hadn't seen in years. "He's in town for work." "It was just lunch." "Mark," she added, her voice edged with defensiveness that twisted my stomach. I set my fork down too hard, the sharp clatter breaking the fragile quiet. We drifted into safer topics. Our daughter's homework, the dripping faucet. But my mind refused to let go. James. Even his name felt like a ghost rising between us. I remembered the story she once told about him, how wild and consuming they'd been together. She'd chosen me instead, the steady one. Or maybe, I thought bitterly, I'd just been the safer choice. When she stood to clear the plates, I noticed how her shoulders tensed, every movement tight with something unspoken. I wanted to press her, to demand the truth, but fear stopped me cold. What if the truth was worse than suspicion? That night, I couldn't sleep. Shadows stretched long across the bedroom, and though Sarah's breathing was slow beside me, it felt like a lie. Moonlight striped her face through the blinds, and I found myself wondering when she'd become a stranger. Had she laughed with him that afternoon, leaned in close the way she used to with me? I rolled away, staring at the wall where our photo hung slightly crooked. 20 years of mornings, arguments, and whispered promises. Could all of it really fall apart over one lunch? By morning, she was already in the kitchen, humming softly as the coffee brewed. But even that fell off, like she was performing our life rather than living it. "You're up early," I said, leaning against the counter. "Couldn't sleep," she replied, stirring sugar into her mug. Her phone sat face down beside her. I wanted to grab it, to look, to know, but I didn't. "Are you seeing James again?" I asked instead, the words slipping out sharper than I intended. Her spoon froze mid-stir. "No," she said quickly, too quickly, and I knew it wasn't true. 2 days later, I saw her car parked outside a downtown cafe. I hadn't meant to follow her. It just happened. But through the window, I saw her laughing with him. James looked older, sure, but still carried that same easy confidence. His hand rested close to hers on the table. My chest burned. I didn't go inside. I just drove home. The image burned into my mind. When she came through the door later, cheeks pink from the cold, I was waiting on the couch. "Where were you?" I asked quietly. She froze mid-motion, her coat half off. A flicker of guilt crossed her face. "Errands," she said, but her voice faltered. "Don't lie to me, Sarah." The words came out rough, trembling with anger I could barely contain. Her eyes filled with tears. "Mark, it's not what you think," she whispered. But the truth was already written in the way she looked at me. "Then tell me what it is," I said. She sank onto the couch, covering her face with shaking hands. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she murmured. "It was just lunch at first, but then I missed him. I missed who I was with him." Her confession hit like a blow. I wanted to rage, to scream, but instead, I just stood there hollow. "Do you love him?" I asked, barely recognizing my own voice. She lifted her head, eyes red and wet. "I love you," she said, but it sounded more like an apology than truth. The rest came slowly, lunches turning into dinners, messages into calls. She swore it hadn't gone further, but even she didn't sound convinced. "Why?" I whispered. Her shoulders shook. "I was lonely. You were always gone. I felt like I didn't exist anymore." Her words hurt because I knew they weren't lies. I'd let work and routine consume me, believing our love could survive on autopilot. I stepped outside for air, the cold biting into my skin. The street was silent, our daughter asleep upstairs, unaware that everything beneath her roof had cracked open. When I returned, Sarah was still on the couch, her eyes raw, her hands clasped tight. "What happens now?" she asked softly. I didn't answer, not because I didn't care, but because I genuinely didn't know. Her betrayal was real, but so was everything we had built. And as I stood there, caught between love and devastation, I understood the cruelest truth of all. It wasn't her infidelity that broke me. It was realizing that even now, I wasn't sure I could stop loving her.